I want to say, first of all, that I'll be very brief because there are several other people here who wish to speak, but I want to commend my friend John Linder, who has been so long and has worked so hard in advocating the fair tax, and also I especially want to commend my good friend, the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, for calling this special order tonight. The gentleman from Iowa has been a real leader, a real champion in the fight to reduce our taxes and to try to bring federal spending under some type of control. This is my 21st year in the Congress, and I'll tell you, I have seen some pretty mind-boggling spending in that time, but even I have been shocked and astounded by all the spending that we have seen lately, and it just seems to be almost completely out of control. And in all this spending and legislation that we've passed just in the last few months, in the midst of that, we've raised our national debt limit to $12,104 billion. $12,104 billion. That's a mind-boggling, incomprehensible figure, and nobody can really understand it or relate to it, but David Walker, as many of you know, the former head of the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, has been going around this country trying to be a Paul Revere to sound the warning, to say that as troublesome and worrisome as the $12 trillion national debt is, that even a greater problem is what he estimates are now $56 trillion in unfunded future pension liabilities. And I used to say that what we were doing to our children and grandchildren is terrible, but actually now I say what we're doing to ourselves, because I don't believe it's going to be more than 10 or 15 years, if that long, before we're not able to pay all our Social Security and Medicare and veterans pensions and all the things we've promised our own people with money that will buy anything. What we'll do what governments all over the world have done when they've gotten in this situation. They've just started printing more money, and that never works. It's like a ball going downhill. It just means that what people thought was a good pension is not going to work, not going to support them at all. And every place in this world where the people have let their government get out of control, what has happened, there have been a few elitists at the top. It's basically wiped out the middle class, and there's been a huge starvation class, because that's the only thing big government is good at, is wiping out the middle class. And I will say this, there is no good reason why we should have a tax code nearly as complicated, convoluted, and confusing as the one we have, where I have read that even half the advice the IRS itself gives out is wrong. And the fair tax is certainly has a lot of merit to it. Mr. Linder has pointed out so many things, but right now the people who are paying their taxes, their honest share of taxes, they're paying the taxes for the illegal drug dealer, the illegal immigrants and the drug dealers and those who work in the underground economy. And under the fair tax, the illegal immigrants and the drug dealers would have to start paying their share of taxes. In addition to that, we have, I think it's 65 million foreign tourists. They would help us pay a fair tax. They don't help us pay an income tax. And as Mr. Linder just said, we now spend, he said, $350 billion just in filling out the tax forms, and that is ridiculous that we have a system that is that complicated. We now have, as you pointed out, as the gentleman from Iowa pointed out a short time ago, the administration has submitted a $3.9 trillion budget. And I noticed that Jim Cramer, the famous stock analyst who's on television every night, he said President Obama's budget may be one of the great wealth destroyers of all time. And that is a significant statement coming from a man who has been a six-figure contributor to the Democratic Party. He said President Obama's budget may be one of the great wealth destroyers of all time. We don't need that, especially in this type of economy. We don't have enough people who realize this. There is waste in the private sector just like there's waste in the public sector, but the waste in the private sector pales in comparison to the waste that's in the public sector, because a business that continually wastes money will very soon go out of business. But a government agency that wastes money just seems to get increased funding. So what that means is that every dollar you can keep in the private sector will do more to create jobs and keep prices low than will any dollars turned over to the government. Yet I saw on Lou Dobbs last night that in this past year we've lost 4 million jobs in the private sector, while government employment has increased by 151,000 over the past 12 months. At the same time that individuals and families all over this country are having to cut back, we're giving increases to the government. And the Washington Post, just after we passed the stimulus, and they support it, but they said it would mean a massive financial windfall. That's the words they used, a massive financial windfall for federal agencies. So that's who's coming out good in this, the federal bureaucrats, federal agencies. And this area, which was already one of the wealthiest areas in the country, is going to come out just fine under this stimulus package and under all this increased spending we're doing. But about the time we were voting on the stimulus package, 203 leading university economists ran a full-page ad in the Washington Times, and they said this: "We, the undersigned, do not believe that more government spending is a way to improve economic performance. More government spending by Hoover and Roosevelt did not pull the United States economy out of the Great Depression in the 1930s. More government spending did not solve Japan's lost decade in the 1990s. As such, it is a triumph of hope over experience to believe that more government spending will help the U.S. today." And these economists continued and said this: "To improve the economy, policymakers should focus on reforms that remove impediments to work, saving, investment, and production. Lower tax rates and a reduction in the burden of government are the best ways of using fiscal policy to boost growth." And so I'll just wind up with a couple of more comments. Edward Randell, the governor of Pennsylvania, when he was the mayor of Philadelphia, he testified in front of a congressional committee, and he said this. He said, "The problem with government is that there is no incentive for people to work hard, so many do not. There is no incentive to save money, so much of it is squandered." And that pretty much sums it up. And that pretty much sums up why the more money you turn over to the government, the less it helps the economy. It helps those who are in with the government, but if you want to really help the poor people and the lower income people in this country, then you will try to, every way possible, to keep more money in the private sector. We're going in the opposite direction today. I noticed that even the liberal New York Times reporter asked President Obama a few days ago, was he a socialist? And that's the path we're headed down. They may try to deny it, and socialism, though, has not worked any place in this world. If it had, the Soviet Union and Cuba would have been heaven on earth. And so I could say more, but I'll stop because others want to speak. And once again, I want to commend my friend, the gentleman from Iowa, for bringing us together here tonight. Thank you very much.